Thank you very much. Good morning. We're not short of predictions about what AI is going to do to all our companies. If you follow the Aspen Ideas Conference, which is rather like this event but with much better skiing, you'll find that the Jim Farley, the chief executive of Ford, a couple of weeks ago said half of all American white-collar jobs are going to go in the next 5 years, which is an unbelievably bold and ambitious prediction. Perhaps we might bring that down a bit to reality with our panel today. From my right, we have Umang, Chief Technology Officer at PwC, Danielle Gilliam-Moore, Director of Global Public Policy at Salesforce, and Dr. Seth Dobrin, Qantm AI, but also IBM's first ever Chief Global AI Officer. Umang, I thought I might start with you, just to give us a sort of a quick tour d'horizon of where we are. The clients you talk to, the PwC clients you talk to, what are they actually doing with AI right now? Are they sort of, as Colin talked about, trialing and dipping their toe in the water, hiding it in IT? Where are they all?
Well, Dom, let me start with a stat. We surveyed CEOs and 90% of them told us that they've invested in AI, yet only 15% are getting value or seeing an ROI. So that kind of tells you dynamically over across border CEOs what the feeling is in business. I congratulate the CEOs who have invested because actually I think investing early in deploying AI to the workforce actually starts to build that AI muscle. And it's not about what AI can just do today, it's about what AI will be able to do tomorrow. There is a common theme though, when you then dig deeper and you talk to the 15% that are getting value, what they have done is they have seen AI as a transformation project. It's not just an IT project. The remainder that aren't seeing the value, the typical conversation is the CEO says to the CIO, hey, what are we doing around AI? Oh yeah, I've turned on the chatbot, right? And that's it, right? There's no investment into the employees and actually helping them to adopt, train them, and actually thinking of it as a business transformation. And those organizations that are seeing it as a business transformation, and they're really empowering the functions and the different parts of the business to actually transform themselves with AI, putting engineers in, as well as supporting the employees to adopt, actually are getting the benefits.
So Seth, you need to think about it as a business transformation piece as much as an IT piece. How do you go about preparing companies to be ready for AI, to take the most advantage of it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Also, in addition to Qantm AI, I actually recently announced the launch of the first Deterministic Frontier Lab, ARIA Labs. And so when
what's a Deterministic Frontier Lab?
So it's a frontier lab like OpenAI and others, except we build deterministic instead of probabilistic foundation models. And we launched our first model 3 weeks ago, which is a world model in a beta product.
And it has two staff, this startup, doesn't it?
We have two staff, and we built our product in about 3 months with 1.5 developers. I'm only a half a developer.
And an AI development tool, I guess?
With multiple AI development. So with one AI development tool and multiple AI models. So yeah, we use the coding AI du jour, which now is ChatGPT, which is now GPT-5, was Grok, was Claude, and we use Manus to help us do planning.
Okay, so you're probably that particular startup is probably not a great example for this audience, maybe.
Well,
how should big organizations?
So I think tools like Cursor are great for startups to scale. You can use Cursor for greenfield. You can use tools like that for greenfield to do 80%, 90% of your coding, because you can build code in very small chunks. Tools like that, you want to keep code less than 1,000 lines of code. You want to keep it very small. If you're in brownfield or legacy code, you can't use those tools for everything because of context window. So I think everyone in the room's probably heard of issues with context window. And so they kind of lose their capacity to do as good of coding in large chunks of code, which enterprise code is. And so, but they still have a lot of good value for enterprise code. They can help you debug things. They can help you with documentation. They can help you just with all sorts of stuff with adding new capabilities. But I also think there's a lot of value as you're building new capabilities to think about how you could build like a startup. So think about how could you enable your development teams to build like a startup. Build code in 1,000-line chunks, so don't build anything. Automatically document your code. Make sure that everything is documented automatically by these things. So you can now have consistency in how everything is done. And so you no longer have to, command your developers to do things. Everything automatically happens. They don't have to worry about it. So it makes happier people, and everyone's happier. Your managers are happier, you're happier. You don't have to worry about this stuff.
Danielle, I was looking at the Salesforce website yesterday, and I sort of think of Salesforce in one particular kind of way as a IT relationship, customer relationship management. So the whole website now is about AI and selling AI products to customers. So is most of Salesforce customers now are looking to you to do some kind of AI enablement for them?
Yes, they are. I think Salesforce, working there, I've been there for 8 years now. It's been so interesting because there was a time at which no one really knew what Salesforce is or was, and now people do know. And I think in that same vein, we had large customers, we have small customers, and so there are a lot of businesses out there that depend upon us to do different things for them. AI is an incredible opportunity to show the tech stack at work. So a company like Salesforce can help give our customers agents. And I mean, they're harder to build, but we're trying to make them easy. I myself tried to build an agent to help with a fictional hotel.
Well, on your website, one of the first pages is let's build an agent.
Yes.
And it gives you all the different kinds of things. You can click on it and we'll start building it. And
it will. It is easier, but I will be very honest, because I think we're trying to have a frank conversation. It's not always the easiest, but I think that's why that partnership is so important. It's taking what I think some people were saying is going to be the easiest thing, and it's having an honest conversation. Salesforce can help you build an agent. It can help you organize your data. It can tell you, suggest to you some use cases so that your employees can really get, good use and ROI out of it. But there are other companies out there, Sierra, there's agentic tooling companies out there that are also helping to solve the agentic, I don't want to call it a problem, but the prospect of agents. And so, whereas I think we were at one point really looking at AI as like a binary thing, developers and deployers of AI, now we're seeing how the industry itself, it's a tech stack, and there's so much opportunity there, and companies like Salesforce are trying to open those doors and windows for our customers to help them more seamlessly integrate this into their operations.
Just to make it more granular, when you talk about making an agent, you're talking about making a piece of software that will do a process that is currently done by humans.
Yes, but and it's not their whole job. I think Colin was talking about in the last job. It's in the last panel. It's really trying to give them an agent that will do the tedious work for them, the tasks that they don't want to do. Which I think will be incredibly helpful. And I think we were talking for a time, especially in the policy space, there was all of this marketing jargon about autonomous, but it's really about augmenting employees. So, instead of having to do reports that, waste a lot of their time, they can now shift some of that over to an agent to then be free to do a bit more thinking and some of the more humanistic aspects of their job. I mean, I think we're really talking about it as a partnership, not something that's going to take jobs away from people, but something that will be a partnership.
Can we talk about augmentation versus job loss? I think this is an important conversation because especially in the US, there's an issue with augmentation, especially when you see a downturn in the market, right? Because CEOs and CFOs especially have a commitment, a fiduciary responsibility when there's a downturn in the market to their investors. And I think as leaders, we're being a little bit disingenuous when we say we're augmenting people and it's not going to lead to job loss. Because
isn't that the whole point of technology? Is to
get rid of people. But when we say we're not going to lay people off ever for a role because we're augmenting you, we're making you more efficient, and we're gonna just make you more efficient, let you do more things. Really, if you're 60% more efficient, you and all your peers, one of two things are happening. We're not going to hire more people. which is a form of layoffs. You're just not backfilling. Or when the market turns down, which it will eventually, we're going to have to go through layoffs. It's not because anyone's mean. It's not because anyone wants to. It's because the way we're structurally set up right now, they will get, your executive team will get sued by their investors if they don't. The way public companies are. They have no choice. It's a zero-sum game. If revenues drop, they have to.
I suppose the question is, though, is AI giving them the tool to do it in advance of a downturn?
Yes.
And they should be doing
And
it.
they should be. They have no choice. I mean, they're trying to make their businesses more profitable now to get ahead of it. But because they're making their businesses more profitable now, they're setting expectations that they will continue to have those profits. And so they're setting expectations to their investors who are, you saw that line, right, for the Magnificent Seven. So the employees are staying flat, the revenue's going up, so the profits are going up, right? Investors expect that. And so when you see a downturn, if we get a bubble, they're going to continue to expect that, so they're going to expect them to maintain that margin, and so they're going to expect them to lay off people.
So Umang, the agents are coming. Just tell us, perhaps with reference to what you're doing at PwC, because I know you're doing a big transformation thing at PwC. Are agents a part of that?
Yeah, agents are most certainly part of that, right? But like I said before, from day one, we saw AI and the deployment of AI as a transformation project. And most people probably don't know this, but we are, from a UK perspective, one of the biggest users and developers of AI solutions. And our journey really started with deploying an AI tool to 1,000 people. We had lots of FOMO in the organization. And we then, in the UK, actually deployed it to all 22,000 very, very quickly.
But the people that PwC employ are the kind of people who want new technology, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not going to be that way at every company.
That's right. But we also went with the motto, or created the culture, which is view AI as a skill, not as a shortcut, right? It's not about efficiency. Actually, deploying a chatbot in what we do in professional services is not going to immediately deliver ROI. What delivers ROI is getting the whole employee base to understand how to work with AI. So as we're now moving into that journey around starting to deploy agents, actually our people on the ground who understand our clients, they understand the functions that they're serving, whether it's tax, audit, deals, consulting, they're actually able to take their own processes that are in their mind and start to configure agents along with the engineers. So what you're really doing is you're embedding the knowledge that our people have together with what our clients need, together with our engineers, into agents to support our employees.
Where will we first see agents most at work? I was talking to a company recently which now does all its movement of teams, an HR function, which used to take a couple of weeks when they were setting up a new project, all done by AI now in a matter of minutes, all the contracts changed and all the reporting done. Eliminated a whole HR function. Yeah. Is HR one of the first places? Marketing? Where else?
I think actually the opportunity for AI is across business functions. I'll give you an example of a client in the real estate space. And actually I was talking to the CEO who said, we've deployed the chatbot and we're just not seeing the value. And I said to him, what matters to you most, right? What's your most competitive threat? Let's not worry about which function. And he said, my challenge is finding land faster than anybody else so that I can then get planning permission and build and fundamentally bid for that piece of land quickly. And so what we did, we said, okay, well, that's your fundamental business problem. That's what gives you competitive advantage. And so what we did is we worked with his team and built a new AI solution that looks at geospatial images, right? So satellite images. Takes those in through the AI, it identifies land, it compares that to what's up for sale in the public market, and also then starts to take planning data, historical planning data. And what that has enabled them to do is to identify the land that's up for sale, bid for it quickly, and also know whether they're likely to get planning and on what type of condition and what type of planning they're likely to get based on historical information, as well as then start to prepare the planning information. That's all being done at the same time.
And that's a whole bunch of people that would have been doing that before.
All of the people that the CEO employed to do what I've just described are still there. What they're doing is they're acquiring more land much faster, they're building much faster, creating homes much faster, right? So actually the people are still there. They're just doing a different role. And I think I worry about quite a lot of the hype around actually AI will lead to job losses. Look, job losses, to your point, are always going to be there for economic reasons.
Yep.
Job roles will need to change, right? What people need to do will need to change. They'll need to be able to work with AI. If I look at our own organization, AI it's about actually moving from our people doing all of the work to our people doing some of the work, agents doing some of the work. But there's things that our agents can't do. We're a firm that is built on trust and making sure that we are delivering quality output with relationships. That requires strong relationship building. It requires empathy. It requires all the skills that AI can't provide. So I think as well as upskilling your workforce on AI, it's about really doubling down on the capabilities and the skills that are going to be needed to be successful elsewhere.
And if I could also jump in, I think one area we're talking about in terms of the job loss, I think we're squarely focused on the private sector and the way potentially large companies get smaller. But I think that there's also a really big opportunity in the government because it is, historically tight budgets, understaffed. There's ability for agents to help the government that is always resource constrained appear bigger and actually be able to do more and deliver more services to their constituents.
Especially underserved.
Yeah, exactly. So I know we're focused on the private sector here, but I do want to bring in that government adoption piece as a potential place for great growth.
It certainly is, and the UK government has a great record of IT projects doing very well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Especially in NHS.
Especially in NHS. Danielle, your specialty is in regulation.
Yes.
If we are going to a world where agents are doing these things, quite meaningful functions in the company, perhaps making people redundant, even doing the whole HR thing, what are the ethical considerations that management should be thinking about? And also for regulators, what do they have to think about when they have pieces of software doing things that humans were doing before?
How much time do you have to talk about that issue?
Give me 30 seconds.
I'll try to say this really fast. So I think there's a conversation happening between the government and private sector, but also civil society. And it's this very question. We already have privacy regulation, we have content moderation, IP. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, I thought with the AI policy conversation that we would be talking about all new ideas and all new policy. And in some ways we kind of are, but then a lot of times we're talking about the same policies that we've been talking about.
The same debates in the past 10 years.
Data privacy, talking to the ICO, it's some of the same conversations. But I think where there's a bit of a difference, and this is where I think business leaders and governments really need to talk, is around transparency, around ethical considerations. When should AI be used? When should potentially that agent? When should it be handed over to an agent? How do you ensure that companies, large and small, with compliance teams and no compliance teams, how should they handle this? And I think when you look at the EU and the EU AI Act versus the UK versus the US, I think the difference there will be clarity. And in terms of setting the goalpost to compliance there, what are the underlying documents that help business leaders say we are complying? I think that's a really hard question. I think you see the EU wrestling it with it right now and having this whole conversation around simplification. I think the UK has done a admirable job actually in terms of not spinning up a whole new regulatory system, but instead trying to use what they already have and make some changes around the edges. And the US, I'll just say, is a bit of a wild, wild west right now. So I'm not going to completely touch on that until you give me that question.
Do you think that the Trump era US will actually probably have a very light touch on this, not try and get involved too much at all?
Yeah, I mean, you have the AI action plan. I think there's actually a lot of work being done at the agency level around government adoption of AI. The rules though themselves, Senator or Chairman Ted Cruz had introduced an AI sandbox bill. Congress right now is not working. So in terms of legislation coming out of the U.S., you won't see it right now at this time at the federal level, but you do have states like California and Colorado legislating. Colorado passed a bill that they're currently trying to fix. So TBD on the U.S. I mean, I think what you can expect, though, is the U.S. is going to try and ensure that it has a thriving tech economy. I think blue states and red states are going to disagree on how to get there, but I think all the same, it's incumbent upon the private sector to think about what does an acceptable use policy for my AI tooling look like? How can I articulate that to the consumer? How can I increase trust? I think the regulatory fragmentation, I think, makes it clear that private sector is going to play a very big role here in ensuring that consumers want to use the technology. I don't think government will be the key to that necessarily.
And you've seen all of Trump's advisors, my former colleague Dario Gil, David Katz, Michael Castrioff, I can never say his last name, Castrios. They have all in their form, Dario from IBM, Michael from Scale, they have all been advocates for using existing regulations to regulate AI and only filling in gaps, and they don't believe there's very many gaps. And so that's the only place you will see AI regulation, and Senator Cruz is trying to fill in where, and that's the only place there's consensus is on in the House and the Senate.
I mean, because internet regulation is a bit of a muddle at the minute.
What?
The EU,
what in the US?
Well, online regulation. Exactly. But
Sorry.
The EU going one way, the US a different way, and the UK sort of floating in the middle somewhere, and actually probably doing okay.
No, I think a good job, not okay, better than okay.
But in the end, don't you have to make who's going to win this battle of regulation? Surely the US is.
I'm not sure. I think, can I just double down on your point around the private sector playing a massive role here? So irrespective of what regulation does here, right, fundamentally, organizations want to do right by their customers and their employees. That's what's going to matter, right?
I think the internet has proved that's not true.
Well, I'm not sure, right? I think a responsible organization will want to do right by their employees and right by their customers. And so I'm currently working with a bank, right, who's deploying an AI chatbot, right, to serve customer service. And actually, one of the things that we're doing...
But that's a heavily regulated industry. That's different.
Sure, it's regulated, but they still want to do right by their own code of conduct and what their regulators need them to do. But actually, one of the things that we're doing as PwC with this client is actually helping them to validate the efficacy of the model, right? So actually, we've started to see things like bias come through. But this is a client of ours that actually cares, and therefore then are making tweaks to the models to take out some of that bias.
I think if you look at the internet, you see examples of where that's not true. You're seeing parallels in AI. You saw OpenAI fire their safety team. You see, and then you see Anthropic doubling down on their safety team. I think you're seeing parallels of what you saw in the internet. You're seeing that in AI, where you're seeing some companies doubling down on being ethical and safe, and you're seeing others not. And so I don't think you can say that we can rely on companies. I don't think we want to over pivot on regulation. I'm not advocating for that. I think we need to be careful, because over pivoting on regulation favors the incumbents. And I think that's a really, really bad thing. Not that I care. My startup can comply with any regulation because we're deterministic as far as my company is concerned. Have at it, but we can't favor the incumbents.
Well, let's bring it back to the workforce. So Nigel from GraphCall, was saying earlier that talking about the skills needed for the future, and actually what you needed are some really basic foundation skills, because you're going to be changing jobs several times. Seth, what about this? I mean, we were talking earlier about industrial revolutions, how quickly they go, people losing jobs because of changes in technology. What should we be thinking about in terms of education for this?
Yeah. So first of all, I sound like a nihilist, but I'm not. I mean, I'm very, very positive. I think net at the end, we're gonna be way better off, right? Just like every other industrial revolution, at the end, like Umang said, much better off at the end. Everything's going to settle. But every other industrial revolution has happened over 3 to 5 generations. A generation is at least 15 years, right? So someone leaving school, worst case scenario, by the time they transition out of the workforce, that's when the industrial revolution happened. This one's very compressed. We're seeing it happen in real time right now. So how do we transition across while people are in the workforce? This is a very hard conversation. We're figuring it out as we go. Canary in the coal mines, we've already talked about. We're seeing, software developers have unemployment like for the first time in living memory. How do we reskill them, upskill them? We don't know. The only thing we can do, my opinion, as employers, is to give our employees time at work to train. That's what you were alluding to, Umang, is let's give them time at work to train, to upskill. That behooves us as employers. That makes our employees more valuable. It's cheaper to maintain good employees who have domain knowledge of our business than it is to hire new ones. End of conversation. It builds loyalty, it builds, but I think there is going to be some downsizing of every organization, and we need to be honest with ourselves and our employees about that. I think that's just it.
Just running quickly down the panel, starting with you, do you agree with this Jim Farley thing that I started with, the chief exec of Ford saying half of white-collar jobs are going to go? Do you think that's accurate, Umang?
No, I don't think it's true. Look, I think every industrial revolution creates new roles.
Half of current AI white-collar roles. Perhaps I'll put it a bit more specifically.
Sure. If you're looking in the context of current, I don't think it's going to be half. Yeah. Right? Because I think you're still going to need employees to supervise the outputs of AI, to actually create the workflows that are needed. So it may not be as much, but I do fundamentally believe that new business models, new businesses will emerge, which will create new jobs.
That's it. There's going to be half as many jobs in a company, but you're going to see twice as many companies or more.
Danielle, sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm going to roundaboutly answer your question. I think we also have a responsibility to not scare the lawmakers. I think we should all be a bit more circumspect when we say things like 50%. And I'm not chastising the person.
Because these are people who vote, after all.
We also, I think there has been, I don't know if anybody's really following the regulatory conversation. There was, in the beginning days of AI, there was a serious push to comprehensively regulate AI. The technology, there was frontier model bills. They were looking at the inputs, the outputs. They were going to regulate soup to nuts, because I think there was, from the marketers, from the business community, this overstatement of what AI was going to do to our lives, to the workforces. And so I think there needs to be a little bit of clarity but honesty about what AI can and cannot do, so that there isn't such a regulatory overreach to prevent those things.
Yeah, we're coming very close to the end, so I have one question I have to ask before the end. I was told to ask, just running again down the panel, starting with you, Seth. What does the world of work look like in 5 years?
Yeah, I think this relates to this last question. I'm going to do both at the same time quickly. So I think, yes, I agree that you're going to see half as many jobs, if not more, in every company. But I think when you say things like that, you also need to couch it, to your point, with we also need to make sure, as we're figuring out how to regulate that, how we make it easier and help people start companies, because that's how you're going to fix that problem, is by increasing the number of companies and help subsidize that to some way.
So, Umang, I'll come to you and then finish with you, perhaps, Danielle. What does the world of work look like in 5 years' time? Are we all going to be working for two-people startups rather than for PwC, for example?
I think it depends on the sector. Right, it will be very variable, but broadly speaking, I think society can't exist without employment, right? And so society itself will self-regulate to make sure that actually is able to create employment. It's what the people do in a white collar role. As I said earlier, it's going to be about the people really facing off to other people, building that trust, showing that empathy, leveraging AI to help them to do their work. And I think that that future is near. It's coming soon. But I have 3 young children, right? And do I worry about are they going to be able to find employment? No, right? Because actually, to Seth's point, new organizations will emerge, new roles will emerge, but the the roles that people are doing today will fundamentally shift.
Danielle, finishing with you. AI can't hope to keep up with the pace of regulation,
Nope.
can it? You'll be fine.
No. AI will far outpace regulation. And so I hope that governments around the world understand that. And so in 50 years, we see a regulatory landscape that isn't as fragmented as the one that you might see, for example, in cybersecurity, and instead is looking at creating international consensus around something that is very international. I don't know if that's trite, but that really is my hope.
An international future. We should thank our panelists, Umang from PwC, Danielle Gilliam-Moore from Salesforce, and Dr. Seth Dobrin from Qantm AI and his own startup. Thank you very much.